Okay, let's start configuring our DNS server. We have installed two operating systems, and the operating system version and name is Red Hat 7.9. Correct. Okay, and the second machine also is Red Hat 7.9. So we have taken two machines. One is server and second one is slave. Okay, so this would be our master machine, and this would be our slave machine. So I have disabled this firewall D service. Okay, status is running. Let's disable this service. Disable, and let's stop it. Okay, now we have to turn off the disable the SLinux also. SLinux config disable. Now reboot the system. Same goes to here also. Let's disable these firewalls, stop the firewall, and let's go to this file to disable SLinux. Okay, system. After disabling SLinux, we need to reboot the system. Okay, let's start the session again. Okay, again I have to mount ISO in this server so that we can configure local yum repository VITC. Okay, that is that. Okay, let me show you. I have already configured this repository. The name is repo base URL is mnt. So mnt is where I have mounted. I'm going to mount the ISO. GPG check is 0 and enabled equals to 1, means my repository should be enabled. Okay, same goes to this server also. Why I don't know, but this server is response is very slow. This server's response time is very slow. Let me check the configuration of it. For the master machine, there is 4 GB RAM and 4 CPUs. In the slave, 4 GB and 4 CPU. Yeah, that's right. Configuration is same. Okay, now it's accessible. See, here also I have configured the same repository which I have configured in master server. Okay, see, same configuration. Okay, it could be a different. You can create your own repository and you can create your own repo files with the different names of the repo and the container, the repo and the file name. Okay, but dot repo should be your extension, file extension. Local is my file name and dot repo is extension. Dot repo should be your extension. Your file name could be anything. Okay, now let's mount the DVD on MLT. Same goes to this server also. Now let's install the packages which are required for DNS server. Okay, now let's install the same packages in another server also. Let's start the configuring of DNS server in master server first. So go to etc named.conf. Okay. First of all, before this, set your host name with FQDN name, whatever the domain name you would be going to configure. That domain name you have to mention over here with your host name. This first field of these three fields, server example com. So these three fields, the first field uh, of this line is server, and this is your host name. The second two are example.com, which is your domain name. So this domain name we are going to configure over here. Okay. Now before this you have to set your host name. You have to set your etc hosts file. Let's configure this file also. In host file is mandatory. We have to configure this. Let's give the IP address 192.168.0.252 is my DNS server IP address, and the host name is server.example.com. I'm creating an alias name for this is server. Again, this is my slave server, and the slave server IP address I'm giving over here. The host name I have set for this machine slave.example.com slave. Okay. For the same configuration, I have to put in slave machine also. That's it. Save the file. Okay. So some things like SLNets firewall, setting host file are mandatory to configure on both machines. Also installing the packages of bind and bind utils. Okay. Now let's go to the configuration again. The prerequisites again, it's a prerequisite. We need to check our uh, network interface. So for that, the network our network interface is ENS33 IP link. So here also you can check the network interface name. So this is your network interface name. Go to this network interface configuration file etc sysconfig network hyphen script ifcg ENS33. Okay. Now in this file you have to configure your IP address, which should be static. Okay, static means you have to configure the IP address manually. Then prefix means your net mask. You have to configure your gateway, and you have to configure DNS1 as your DNS server IP address. So we are configuring this server as our DNS server. So I'm configuring the same IP address over here, DNS1 and the DNS IP address. Again, you have to mention your domain, which is your domain name you want to configure. I'm going to configure example.com over here. Okay, so these all settings you should mention in your network configuration file. Also you have to check on boot should be yes, and boot proto here. Boot proto you can mention none, or you can mention static. Both should be okay. And same configuration you have to make in the another server also. In the slave machine, 253 is the IP address of the slave machine, and rest of the things are there. Domain is example.com. DNS server IP address we need to mention. So this is our DNS server, master DNS server. So master DNS server IP address should be there. So this slave machine would be connected to the master server, master DNS server. So that's why we have given the IP address of master machine over here, the network configuration file of slave server. Okay, now these are the prerequisites. Let's go to config. So in the production environment, you have to be sure that you are means what you are doing, whatever you are doing. See, this is the configuration file. This is the main configuration file of DNS server. If you are configuring this file, you should know actual parameter in the file. If you miss something, then your DNS server will be crashed. Okay, so the best practice is to configure any kind of Linux network services. You have to back up this file. Okay, now let's back up this file so that if any mistakes happen, you can revert this original file, because using this file the DNS server is properly configured. Let's suppose we already have configured the DNS server, and using this file means this is the main file of the DNS configuration server. On this server the DNS is properly working, and you want to make changes in this file. Okay, so don't go directly to this file and make changes. Don't do this. Just back up this file using cp cp command or in etc itself with the different name b.com dot, and let's suppose today is 16th July 2024. So whoever next will be making changes to this file will take reference of this file, because this is our backup file and this is properly configured. Okay, so so this should be your practice. This is a good practice to take backup of the main configuration file and then go for okay, now here let's see option port 53. So DNS is listening on port number 53. Here this entry should be there. We are not going to change, but we are going to configure the our IP address. The IP address over here 192.168.0.252. So we are giving this IP address as a DNS server IP address over here. Okay, so here allow query to the DNS server from outside, or the slave server or the outside network. Okay, you should mention your network from where you want to receive the queries to the DNS server. So I don't want to go out of this network 192.168.0. I don't want to go out from this network, so I will configure this network only 192.168.0.0/24. Apart from this network, no other network IP address can reach to this DNS server. Okay, now recursion, no, I will explain later in another session what is recursion and what are these options, what are these parameters. Then let's take reference to this container for to this container to configure our zones. Now 4yy p p. So we are going to configure here, which is the first one would be a master zone, sorry, a forward lookup zone, and the second one would be a reverse lookup zone. So forward dot zone would be my file name, and allow update none. Whatever the configuration I'm doing over here, I will explain in next sessions. Master reverse dot zone allow take none. That's it. Now here you have to put your domain name example.com, and the same you have to mention in forward zone also example.com. So this would be your domain name. This is your master server. That's why we have configured. That's why we have written mentioned here that this is our master server. This is master. This is reverse zone file. This would be our reverse zone file, and this file would be saved in var named. So let's see, directory var named is mentioned over here. In this directory we are going to configure our zone files. Okay, so we are done with the named.configuration file. Okay, now let's go to var named directory. There is a sample configuration file they have given you to configure your zone files, which is named.localhost. So cp this file and rename this file with your file name. Not renaming, it will copy and it will take a reference of this file and create a new zone file. Okay, forward dot zone, and we can create the same reverse dot zone. Now we are going to configure forward dot zone. Some of the entries of the reverse dot zone are we are taking reference from forward dot zone. So we will first configure forward dot zone, and then we will copy forward dot zone. We will copy forward dot zone to reverse dot zone. So we will have two files. One would be forward, and second one would be reverse. So let's configure forward dot zone first. Remove this at the rate, remove this, and put your server ftdn name over here, server dot example.com. This dot should be there. This dot com after the dot after dot com should be there. Okay, if this is not there, then it would be creating the problem. It would create the problem. Okay, now here root dot example.com. I will explain you what is root.example.com in comment section. These all parameter which I am configured over here. It's a short video of the configuration. I will explain all this configuration in upcoming videos. In a and okay, in ns and the name server need to give. Then in a the IP address need to mention over here 92.168.0.1 no 252. NS means name servers, A means A record means address. Your address should be this. Okay, and the last entry you should configure here is at the rate a example.com. Let me take the reference from my older configuration. This one is forward. Okay, so this entry would be there. The entry should be like this: server, which is your host name, server, then in a and your IP address. Yes, at the rate should be mentioned over here. At the rate in ns, at the rate in a, and server name in a and IP address. Server name in a and IP address. These are the configuration parameters in the forward dot zone file. Let's take the reference of this file for your reverse dot zone. file. Okay, now open the reverse.zone file. So this we don't need to change now. Okay, now uh, okay. Before doing this, we have to configure name the dot configuration file properly, because in reverse.zone the configuration is not like this. If your IP address is 192.168.0.252 is your DNS server IP address, so you have to write it over here reverse 0.162.192 like this. 0.162, sorry, 0.168.192 dot, the configuration parameter is dot in hyphen addr dot arpa, in hyphen addr dot arpa. So this would be your configuration in named.configuration file for your reverse lookup zone, for your reverse lookup zone only, not for forward. For forward, your example.com, the domain name should be mentioned over here. Okay, now let's go to again reverse.zone file, and the reverse.zone file configuration is like this: @in ns name server, @in ns name server is fine, at the rate in ptr example.com, in ptr, the domain name should be mentioned over here, example.com dot, and server in a IP address, server in a IP address, and the third one entry should be like this: in a, and your host name, in, okay, in ptr. This would be your pointer record, ptr for IP in ptr name, IP in ptr name, and in ptr domain name, then in ptr domain name. That's fine. So we have done with the reverse.zone configuration also. Now let's go to forward.zone again to configure a slave server IP address also. So the same things would be go for slave configuration also. So slave.example.com, this is 253, and that is again the 253 for this entry. Okay, now save this. I will go to reverse.zone. These 4 entries should be for your slave server also. Okay, now here slave.example.com, okay, this entry should be deleted because we don't want any duplicate entry over here. 53 slave, that's it. Okay, let's make it in a good space. Okay, these 4 entries are for domain name server, IP address, and PTR record. Okay, that's it. Slave, server, IP address, and domain name. Okay, we are done with the forward and reverse lookup zone configuration, also named dot configuration. Okay, now let's check named the configuration of the named.configuration file. If there is any error in this file, it would print over here. Otherwise, it will the output should be blank. Now check the zones. The zone, and we need to mention the zone file path where name the forward zone. Okay, before this we need to mention our domain name also. Okay, if this is okay, then your configuration is fine. Start. See, this is also okay. Our configuration is fine. Now let's restart our service. Name the service. The DNS server service is the name the service. Let's check the status once. Status name the it's not running. Let's start the service. Let's check the status now. It's active. Okay. Now status and let's enable the service. Okay. Now let's try 192.168.0.252. Okay. Example.com. Now see. Okay. If the entry is made in result.conf, yes, the entry has been come. Okay. Server can't find. This is our issue. Server can't find 252.0.168.192 in ADDR ARPA. So this means we have misconfigured our reverse zone, I think. Okay, I think this is misconfiguring because this in ADDR ARPA is used for reverse zone. Okay, so we have misconfigured the reverse zone. Okay, let's find out this because and this should be not come over here. Server can't find example.com. Example.com should be not like this. Now let's go to reverse.conf file. vi where named reverse.zone. This entry we can delete. This one example.com one, which is the PTR we have mentioned over there. Now let's try to restart the service again. Whenever you make changes in DNS server configuration files, which is named.conf and the two zone files, you have to restart the service. Okay, after restarting, let's check again. Okay, it's showing the same output. What is the output for this server.example.com? Okay, and what is output for this 192.168.0.252? Okay, fine. Again, something we have done mistake over here. Now let's see what is the mistake. We can ask this to ChatGPT simply. Message to ChatGPT in RHEL 7. For configuring DNS server. Yes. So failure when you're trying to resolve domain name of often indicates a problem with DNS configuration or DNS server itself. Here's the checklist and step to diagnose and resolve the issue on RHEL 7. So this is our resolve.conf file. Okay. In resolve.conf file, ensure the DNS server IP address are correctly listed in resolve.conf file. Let's go to this. Resolve.conf file name server 192.168.0.252. So the IP address is properly configured. Search example.com name is properly configured. Okay. Now go to an option if they have replace IP address with the correct DNS. Okay. Check named.conf if you are configuring the DNS server. In the named.configuration file, the options. Okay. Allow query option should be any. Okay. Ensure listen on and allow query configured correctly configured. Now forwarders, if you are forwarders, make sure they are correct. See, they have mentioned it over here as any, and why this any? Because they have not explaining us what is this any. Okay, let's go to another solution. Validate zone files. Now see, we have validated the zone files within this command named of check zone. Okay, let's check SE Linux and firewall. So our SE Linux is disabled, firewall is also disabled, so we don't need to check it. And again, so I'm a bit confused over here. Any, what is this any? So let's ask again ChatGPT. What is any? So breakdown is over here. The listen on directive in the named.conf file specify the IP address and the port number which the DNS server listens for queries. Here breakdown of the directive listen on 53 any. Okay, now 53 standard port for DNS queries. 2127.0.0.1 the loopback IP address, and which allows DNS server to accept queries from the local host, the server itself. Okay, that's why we haven't deleted this. Okay, now what is any? This keyword indicates that the DNS server should listen for queries on all available network interfaces. Okay, on all available network interfaces. It effectively means that the server will accept query from any IP address assigned to the server. Okay, now example configuration is written over here. Listen on specific IP address to restrict the DNS server to listen only specific IP addresses. So this is the specific IP address which we are okay. Specific IP address which is mentioned over here. IP address network range. Listen on all interfaces. Any. Okay, now we got to know what is any. Now let's go to let's ask ChatGPT. Okay, instead of any, can we configure, can we mention or DNS server IP address. Yes, you can specify your DNS server IP address instead of using any in the listen on directory. Okay, this is listen on directory. If your DNS server IP address is 10, you can configure like this. So we have properly configured this. Okay. Now customizing further. You can add multiple specific IP addresses. If your server has multiple network interfaces and you want the DNS server to listen on more than one interface, you can add this like this. Okay. Now again, while reading this, I was thinking about the configuration of the DNS tmd.configuration file, and here you can see the recursion. Yes is mentioned. So I was thinking about why, because server can't find 252 surface. We need to rectify this issue. Telf minus var log messages. Let's see what messages are saying. So reservoir priming query complete and unable to fetch DNS key set timed out. Now DNS key set is already there. Where let me check the DNS key path. Get the DNS key path. Where is it? Set enable bind keys, etc. the root keys, PID files. Yes, managed keys directories. So where namely dynamic is the path. Okay, the keys are already there. I think the problem is over here. Reverse.zone. The configuration. Okay, the owner of this file is root, and the group owner should be named. Okay, change mode, change owner, root, and it should be named for this file. Check. Okay, the permissions are correct. Now again restart the service and let's check for DNS lookup over here. Again it is showing the same error. It's 253 is not looking at it now. Okay, something is configured over here. Let's find out. Allow query is any, recursion is yes. Let's try this recursion. This is not the issue, but let's try. still this. So let's reverse this. DNS shift enable. Let's figure out the key permissions. cd this directory. Keys permission are also same. Not an issue. Okay, go to where name the directory and check the forward and lookup, reverse lookup zone files. Permission. So this is our forward. Okay, in forward also there is root. Let's change to donor root named for forward.zone file, and yeah, now all named and here is root. Again, let's restart the service and let's check with DNS lookup. Yeah, that's it. So we got it. What was the issue? The issue with the forward zone and reverse zone permission, the ownership of the files. Okay, the ownership of the files of forward and reverse zone should be root named. Okay, nslookup example.com. Now nslookup server.example.com. Okay, now we are getting proper output. Now let's go to the dig 192.168.0.252. Okay, we have dig to IP address. The answer is 0. Now let's dig to server.example.com. Here you can see the answer is 1. It means it has resolved from name to IP address. Should we resolve with IP to name also? Yeah, it is resolving, but the answer is 0, but it is resolving actually, because you can see the IP address of this, and the PTR record is showing the IP address, and the hostname of the server. The PTR record is proper. Okay, so we have done with the master configuration. Now let's go to the slave machine. Okay, now go to conf file. Here you have to mention all the same 2.168.0.253. You need to mention this slave server IP address over here. This is our slave server IP address. Now allow query. You have to mention your network 192.168.0.0/24. Recursion is not required. Okay, now let's take the of this file tc. These zones we should configure as it is over here. Some are there things. Okay, we haven't copied this file. This is master configuration file dot 16072024. Now let's go to this file again. So what we can do scp to this file, to this server tc. That's it, the file is copied. Now go to this file. Okay, change the IP address 253. This should be same. Now let's come over here. Okay, here we should mention slave. Okay, because this is a slave server, not because this the host name is slave. I have mentioned this host name as a slave because it would be easy to understand. Okay, master and slave is the uh, configuration. I have given the server name as a slave. I can give the server name here also. The master server name can be master. Okay, so I can give any host name to the server. I can give computer. I can give insert. I can give logging. I can give log. I can give channel to as the host name of this slave server. But as we are configuring master and slave, and to make you understand easily, I have configured this server host name is as a slave. Okay, so the type also should be slave. Here also the type should be slave. Okay, now the thing you have to mention over here is you have to mention the path of this files, where namely the full path. Okay, and the same goes to here also, where namely, because see, we are not going to configure these files in slave servers like we have configured forward and reverse zone in the master file. We don't need to configure this forward and lookup, forward and reverse lookup zone in slave machine. Why is it? I will be going to explain you right now. Now let's go to DNS configuration in center 7. That's fine, no issue. Center 7 and rail 7 are both are same. Let's refer to this link. Okay, and now we are going to configure zone transfer. It calls zone transfer. Okay, so this is yes, uh, slaves. Okay, we have created another directory for the configuration. So the file would be going to slaves. Okay, so the slaves would be uh, let's check where mainly slaves. Okay, fine. If we configure like this, slave. Okay, and here also we have to configure slaves. Okay, now let's see why we are configuring like this. Slave. It will create a slave directory in where named. This is the master. This is the home directory where named. You can see the the configuration. We see the directory is it's a home directory of zone files and DNS configuration. Okay, now file slaves we need to mention over here. Now the slaves directory would be created. Okay, and in this slave directory the forward.zone and reverse.zone files would be transferred from master server to the slave server. Okay, that would be transferred, that would be copied. Those two files would be copied to the server. We don't need to configure it. Okay, now we have done with the configuration. Okay, and DNS 1 and 2, like this we need to mention in our slave server. Let's go to slave server, configure network configuration, DNS 1 and the DNS 2 253. That's it. And again, master and slave. Okay. So we need to make the same changes in network.configuration file also. DNS 1, 2, 253. That's it. Now we don't need to use this firewall and all. We have already disabled this. Okay. Yes. Permissions. We need to change the permission of var named in slave machine so that slaves directory and zone transfer means the forward and reverse lookup zone should be transferred from master to slave machine. cd var, so where is named root named? Yes, the directory permission is proper. cd named. Okay, and this is the slave. Okay, the slave directory is already over there. Okay, in this slave directory, our two files, which is forward and reverse lookup zone, would be copied. Okay, now let's start the service on this machine. System status name d is stopped. Start the service. Okay, something is misconfigured over here. Let's check what is the misconfiguration. I think the misconfigure is recursion. Recursion should be zone transfer. In slave also, and in master machine also. Okay, recursion should be yes. And there is another option we need to mention it over here. Allow transfer to localhost also we need to mention, and the IP address of the slave machine 192.168.0.250. Zone transfer we have to allow to this on the slave machine and not to other machine. Okay, allow transfer. Let's restart the service. That's it. Restart the service over here also by using the configuration. Allow transfer should be there or not. Let's see. Allow query should be there only, not transfer. That's fine. Recursion no. Okay, recursion we can set to no. Okay. We started the service on master. Now restarting the service on slave. Okay, it's not starting. Let's see what is the issue. So it is showing something etc namely com62 option allow update is not allowed in slave. Okay, fine. This option is not allowed in slave. Yeah, yes, I have missed this. Actually, we need to mention the master machine IP address. The slave machine can understand, or slave machine can read or to connect to the master server. We need to mention instead of allow update masters. See masters and the IP address of the master machine, which is 192.168.0.252. Same need to configure over here also. That's it. Okay. Now let's restart the service. Yeah, the service is restarted. And now check if whether the files are copied or not. See, on slave machine the files are copied. This forward zone and reverse zone, this we haven't configured. Okay, so this would be encrypted. This file would be encrypted. You can't read this. Are you? No, you can't read this. Fine. So the zone transfer is properly configured. Our DNS is also properly configured. Let's check and let's look up here also. Server dot slave dot example.com. Look, okay, server dot example.com. Fine. The query 253 for IP address. This query is not taking. Okay, fine. Let's do the query to example.com. Server can't find the next domain. Okay, example.com. Okay. Now it is showing us two servers, 252 and 253. These two DNS servers. Okay. So the zone transfer is completed, and let's dig to server example.com. Fine. Dig to example.com. Dig to IP address. Answer 0. I don't know why. Need to check. And for 253 also answer is 0. Fine. Okay. So fine. So at least our DNS server is properly configured, and the zone transfer is also properly configured. Why? Because these files forward.zone and reverse.zone, we have not configured this file on slave machine. These files are transferred from our master server, which is this one. Okay, so we have done the small troubleshooting steps also, and we have done the configuration of DNS server. We have checked with the NS lookups, the output is coming properly, and we have configured the zone transfer as well. Okay. So refer to this video and configure your DNS. and make comments. If you have any query, you can comment in the comment box. Okay, thank you for watching this video.